Hello, and welcome to the Office of the Patriot, where we try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left and rhino right. I'm your host, Myron Ybarra.
And I'm your co-host, Angry Mike.
And if you couldn't already conclude this on your own, I'm Hispanic American. Actually, scratch that. I'm really a multicultural American. On my father's side, his mother was primarily Spanish and his father was Mexican. And on my mother's side, her mother was Irish and her father was Mexican. So I have ancestors from Mexico as well as from Europe. And I'm pretty sure I have other remnants of other races mixed in here and there. Maybe I'm 1024th Native American. Who knows? I think the colloquial and unscientific term for this is Heinz 57. So my natural characteristics as a result of this intermingling of races often prompts one of the most bizarre questions, yet one of the most commonly asked by liberals. Why are you conservative? So in this episode of Office of the Patriot, we're going to get into the reasons why these questions are asked by the left and why we are, in fact, conservatives.
Before we continue, my brother and I are both 2% North American Indian.
Well, there we
I'm
go.
not kidding.
So we got Mike over here, 2% North American Indian. So
yeah,
mixed ancestry as well.
I'm a victim, bitches.
Absolutely. When I came up with the idea of talking about why I am a conservative, I thought that minorities were primarily the group that was asked that question, why are you conservative? It appears I was wrong. I found this is actually a very common question that virtually every libtard asks a conservative, either when they feel comfortable with them or when they're trying to insult or argue with them. So women, Caucasian males, Christians, and yes, minorities who are conservatives get asked this question pretty regularly by liberals. But I believe it's for different reasons. And as I said in the opening of this presentation, I will get into a couple of those reasons shortly. So this presentation is going to be in two parts. The first is why are certain groups of people asked this question? And the next part is why Angry Mike and I are conservatives. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of why certain groups of people are asked this question. One of the first reasons is liberals are mistrusting of anyone believing something other than the way they think or how they behave. One of the primary tenets of conservatism and libertarianism is that you should have no issue with other people believing or behaving any way they want, as long as it doesn't negatively impact the life, liberty, or property of someone else. If you want to be charitable with your wealth, well, hell, that's great. If you want to hoard it and make more, well, that's great too. Conservatives believe in the concept of self-determination, also known as personal freedom. Again, as long as it doesn't negatively impact the life, liberty, or property of another citizen. Now, I may not agree with what you do with your money or how you live your life, and I may even vehemently oppose what you do, but I respect the concept of personal freedom more than my personal and or moral tenets that may be in opposition to someone else's. Most liberals do not subscribe to this. They believe in collective consensus. A democracy. And the only real way for a legitimate democracy is through government controls.
Yeah, democracy is a nice way of saying mob rule.
Actually, truth be told, it's a disingenuous way of saying mob rule. That's why many of them have no problem with increasing taxes or forcing rules on other people or regulations and new laws into the public, with a caveat, as long as it doesn't negatively affect them. I've said this before in an earlier presentation of Office of the Patriot, where I explained that freedom can only be given or taken. Unfortunately, it's more difficult to give even with people that you know and have an emotional connection with than it is to take. So giving people you don't know the freedom to do whatever the hell they want, even though you don't agree with it, is very difficult for liberals to accept. And I'm not saying that I'm giving them a pass because it's difficult to give freedom, or at least truthfully endorse it. But that's one of the reasons, or the primary reason, liberals ask the questions, why are you conservative? Mike, you used to be a Democrat. I'm not blaming. Recently, did you ever ask, somebody else, a Democrat, based on their immutable characteristics, why they are conservatives?
So, yeah, I don't really recall ever confronting people when I was a Democrat, I don't remember confronting anybody about them being, a conservative per se. But I used to believe that they were stupid, greedy, and heartless. So that was kind of the stereotype I had in my mind. And what you said just now about liberals having difficulty allowing people true freedom is, as you may remember, that was my biggest issue with conservatism. It's because I believed that most people were stupid, and I still think that way. But I felt it necessary that for those of us who knew better, we needed to make decisions for them, and the only way this was feasible was to use government force. So, like I said, I still believe most people are pretty stupid. And I still find myself struggling at times, witnessing various dumbassery and stupid behavior, bad decisions, what I consider bad decisions, and what I see is probably going to be a bad outcome of those decisions. But I always check myself now, and then I just pull out the popcorn and watch.
But now I'm sure you see the dumbassery usually comes from the Democrats and maybe a few rhinos here and there. Another reason liberals or Democrats ask the question, why are you conservative, is because of the absolute perfect job the Democrat Party in the United States has done vilifying the concepts of personal freedom and a minimally regulated free market. Both things conservatives support and advocate for. And as I said, this touches on the first reason because, again, most liberals believe in the collective versus the individual. Now, I have a question I presented to my classes during a lecture because a significant portion of them are young, and because they're young, many of them have been indoctrinated by their public schools to believe in the collective over the individual. The question is, when you decide to help somebody, let's say it's a close friend with a problem, who is the person who determines how much and what type of help is going to be offered? Is it the person requesting the help, or is it the person providing the help? If you said the latter, then, you're likely a conservative. If you said the former, you're likely a liberal. About 90% of my students that have been asked that same question say the person offering the help is the one who makes the determination of how much and what type of help is going to be offered. So then I ask, if that's the case, then why would you want to compel government to make people help someone else via redistribution of wealth, also known as taxes? And of course, I get slack jaws and wide eyes in response. Welfare and food stamps and all of the public assistance programs that are available by our government are not charity. They're systems that are put into place by government, and they're there to help people, but they're definitely not charitable systems. Charity has to be given from the person to another or group in order for it to be considered charitable. If I force you to give something to somebody else because I believe that you have too much and the other person doesn't have enough, well, that's not charity. That's theft. Hell, how many of you went trick-or-treating with a sibling that didn't manage to get as much or as many good pieces of candy as you did while trick-or-treating? And then you get home and your parents make you dump everything onto the center of the table so they can check the candy for safety, when in reality we know that they're just taking the candy that they want, and then the rest of the candy will get redistributed to all the kids, your siblings, equally, even though you were the one that scored over 70% of everything that was on that table. I know this is an oversimplification of redistribution, but it shows the reality of the idea of redistribution as a good and moral thing to do. It isn't. Redistribution via government rewards mediocrity and punishes excellence, both of which do nothing to help the proverbial collective. Mike, what do you think about the premise of redistribution being the same as, well, charity?
Firstly, I like your analogy. That was really good. But I agree with you 100%. It's what I consider socialism, right? I mean, it's I used to believe not only that it was necessary to do this, but that it was justified, because at the time I felt greedy people should pay more regardless, and they need to help those that were in need. But socialism punishes those that produce, and then it rewards the people that are not productive, in essence. So the lazy people get away, and the problem is that incentivizes laziness.
Absolutely. Now we come to the second part of this presentation, where we discuss why we are both conservative. In truth, I think I was always a conservative. Now I know I definitely wasn't registered as a conservative Republican in my younger years. As a matter of fact, I didn't become politically aware until probably my late 30s. Politics and social issues at the time were unimportant to me. But as I got older, I realized how decisions were made in Washington, D.C., and at that time, Sacramento, how they had a profound impact on the way I lived. So I started paying attention, and I found when I did, most of the things I believed in were things that the Republican Party espoused. Well, even if they didn't practice those things very much. But that doesn't answer why I'm a conservative. I believe my childhood laid the foundation of my conservative values. Like many families in the 70s and early 80s, I was fortunate enough to have both of my parents in the household. They both raised me. My father was the breadwinner. He worked as a civil engineer in the United States Air Force. And my mother, she was a stay-at-home mom, although sometimes she took a part-time job on the base, working at either the commissary bagging or working at the base exchange at the pizza place when they needed to bring more money in. Some of the traditions or rules that I lived by as a kid helped me understand responsibility and competition and consequence. As an example, it wasn't until my early teens that I went to my very first movie off base, and that was an embarrassing experience. Going to a movie on base, before anything starts, the first thing that comes onto the screen is the national anthem, and everybody in the theater stands for the national anthem. If you're in civilian clothes, like obviously we were because we were just kids, you put your hand over your heart while facing the screen. And if you were in uniform, you rendered a salute. This doesn't happen in civilian movie theaters, but I didn't know that. So as soon as the theater screens opened, I stood up and put my hand over my heart while the first preview was being shown. Definitely not one of my smoothest moments. I also remember playing on the playground, and at 4:05 p.m. on Monday through Friday, usually after school, Retreat would start playing through every loudspeaker throughout the entire base. All the kids on the playground would stop playing or doing whatever we were doing, and we would put our hands over our heart, facing the speaker, and wait until Retreat was complete. And then we'd go back to doing whatever we were doing. These foundational behaviors were instilled in me and thousands of other kids of military parents, rather, throughout the United States and actually the world. I also believe in the idea of self-determination and personal responsibility. I get much deeper into those concepts in other presentations of Office of the Patriot. So if you're interested in watching these as well, I'll make sure to put links in the description section below. Mike, ultimately, why did you become a conservative?
Truthfully, I think it was primarily because I was starting to make significant income for the first time in my life.
That'll do it.
And money, hey, greed isn't too bad.
No.
So after a few years, seeing 25 to 30% of my money basically being stolen, a shit ton of money going to Uncle Sam, I just found myself questioning, how in the hell am I supposed to climb out of, not poverty, but how do people climb out of poverty, or how do you rise up through the middle class to become maybe upper middle class, or what most people would consider, comfortable, not necessarily wealthy, but, very comfortable. So I was just kind of pissed off, and, I may still be, a rabid leftist to this day if you and our other friend Jason Quadra hadn't taken the time to basically deprogram me, albeit slowly. It took a while. It took several years of you both questioning me constantly, asking me about different beliefs, trying to help me see the light. So you posed questions to me. You made me think about the answers, and it just eventually it broke through. So I think deep down I was, probably never really a Democrat. I think I was conservative. I just didn't understand it, mainly because my parents were both Democrats, and they would often tell me that my aunt and uncle were not empathetic because they were conservatives, and they were both religious as well, and it saddened them. But, honestly, pre 2000 or maybe earlier, Democrats were not nearly as insane as they are now. It's really different now. And I don't understand how anybody at this day and age could, still be a Democrat or consider themselves, part of that party. It takes me back to my first view of humanity, though. Most people are stupid.
Most people are stupid. That about sums up the, entire Democrat Party. Nicely done. I'd like to say that my self-discovery towards conservatism was a long, self-revealing, arduous process, but it wasn't. I've always believed in the idea of personal freedom, obviously tempered by a constitutional republic. I just never put a title like conservative to it. I honestly thought Democrats were that. It wasn't until I actually started paying attention to what they were saying that I came to realize that the Democrat Party actually abhors the idea of personal freedom and individual liberty. As a matter of fact, if you stretched out the political line end to end, conservatives are about a third of the way towards anarchy with a brief stop at libertarianism. On the other end of this line, moving towards the left, you have Democrats, and if you move all the way to the left, that's where you have totalitarianism, or what they like to claim we support, fascism. I guess they really do believe in the idea of labeling the opposition exactly what they support, and that'll hopefully throw them off. And it makes sense. Democrats have been advocating for a world government for quite some time. They've been trying to slowly move all of us towards this end by relinquishing government powers to the UN and the WHO. As much as I would like the world governments to adopt our way of life here in the United States, I don't believe the world is ready for individual liberty. And that's because people are afraid to make their own decisions and be responsible for them, and their governments are afraid to let them make those decisions in the first place. That's one of the many reasons why the United States is so special. I still have some hope that the rest of the world will eventually adopt the concepts of a constitutional republic of their own. But until that happens, I want to keep ours intact. And I guess, that's the real reason I'm a conservative. And this concludes today's episode of Office of the Patriot.
If you have enjoyed this presentation, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share this channel on your social media. It's really appreciated.
Yes, it definitely is appreciated. Also, please take the time to comment. Viewer engagement via comments is the major metric for channel accessibility on, virtually every single social media platform, YouTube, Rumble, X, MeWe, Facebook. The more people that like, subscribe, and comment, the more this channel will come up when social and political content like this is searched for. And as always, have a blessed day and stay safe out there.